He laughed at the safety demo, mocking the flight attendant's instructions while other passengers watched uncomfortably. But when the plane suddenly stopped responding 30,000 feet above the Pacific Ocean, that same man became the only person standing between 200 lives and certain death. What happened next proved that the universe has a dark sense of irony. Before we dive in, what time are you listening? Where are you from? Drop a comment below and tell me. And please like and subscribe for more videos like this. Marcus Webb was the kind of passenger flight attendants dreaded. He boarded Flight 891 from Los Angeles to Tokyo, wearing an expensive suit and an expression that said he was too important for basic courtesy. He shoved his leather briefcase into the overhead bin, knocking into the woman beside him without apologizing. He dropped into seat 12A, immediately reclining into the person behind him, ignoring their grunt of protest. The flight attendant, a young woman named Jenny Kim, began the safety demonstration. She stood in the aisle, demonstrating how to fasten a seatbelt, how to locate the emergency exits, how to use the oxygen masks. Marcus watched her with a smirk. He pulled out his phone, filming her, making exaggerated faces at the camera. A few passengers near him shifted uncomfortably. One older man whispered something about respect, but Marcus just laughed louder when Jenny demonstrated the life vest. Marcus leaned into the aisle. "I have flown 200 times," he announced to anyone listening. "This is all theater. Nothing ever happens. These procedures are pointless." Jenny kept her professional smile, but her eyes showed the hurt. She finished the demonstration and returned to her station, her cheeks flushed. The plane taxied to the runway. Marcus was still on his phone, refusing to put it in airplane mode despite 3 requests. The businessman beside him, an older Japanese man named Mr. Tanaka, politely asked him to comply with the rules. Marcus rolled his eyes. "Rules are for people who do not know better," he said. Mr. Tanaka said nothing more, but his expression showed what he thought of Marcus Webb. The takeoff was smooth. The Boeing 777 climbed steadily, pushing through a layer of clouds before emerging into brilliant sunshine. The seatbelt sign turned off. Flight attendants began preparing the beverage service. Marcus immediately flagged Jenny down, demanding a specific brand of sparkling water they did not carry. When she apologized and offered alternatives, he made a show of his disappointment, loud enough for surrounding rows to hear. 2 hours into the flight, Marcus was watching a movie, his tray table down despite the turbulence warnings, his shoes off and his feet propped against the seat in front of him. The woman in that seat, a mother traveling with a young daughter, had asked him twice to stop. He ignored her both times. The little girl kept turning around, her face showing confusion at why the man was being so mean. Then, at exactly 2 hours and 17 minutes into the flight, something changed. The plane shuddered. Not the normal bump of turbulence, but a deep, mechanical shudder that ran through the entire fuselage. Marcus looked up from his screen, frowning. Several passengers gasped. The seatbelt sign illuminated with a sharp ding. The captain's voice came over the intercom, steady but with an edge of tension. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing a technical issue. Please return to your seats and fasten your seatbelts immediately. Flight attendants, take your seats." Jenny and the other attendants moved quickly through the cabin, checking seatbelts, securing loose items. The plane shuddered again, harder this time. Marcus felt the first flutter of unease in his stomach. He fastened his seatbelt, his movie forgotten. Around him, passengers were gripping armrests, exchanging worried glances. The mother in front of him held her daughter close, whispering reassurances. Mr. Tanaka beside him had his eyes closed, his hands folded calmly in his lap. The plane began to bank, turning back toward land. But the turn was wrong. It was too steep, too fast. Overhead bins rattled. A few opened, spilling bags into the aisle. Someone screamed. The plane leveled out, but the shuddering continued. A deep vibration that felt like the aircraft was tearing itself apart. Then the oxygen masks dropped. They fell from the ceiling panels with a mechanical snap, dangling and swaying. For a moment, nobody moved. Everyone just stared at the masks, at this thing they had seen demonstrated 1,000 times but never expected to actually see deployed. Then panic took hold. People grabbed for the masks, fumbling with them, some putting them on wrong in their fear. Marcus reached for his mask, and his hands were shaking. He pulled it toward his face, but in his panic, he yanked too hard. The elastic band snapped. The mask dangled uselessly in his hand, broken. He stared at it, his heart hammering. Around him, everyone else had their masks on, breathing the emergency oxygen. Everyone except him. He looked at Mr. Tanaka, whose mask was secure. He looked at the mother and daughter in front, both protected. He looked across the aisle at a teenage boy, safe behind his mask, and Marcus realized that he had no air. The cabin pressure was dropping. His ears popped painfully. His vision began to blur at the edges. He tried to flag down a flight attendant, but they were all strapped into their jump seats, their own masks on. The plane shuddered violently. Marcus felt consciousness slipping. His lungs burned. His thoughts became fuzzy, distant. He was going to pass out. He was going to die because he broke his own oxygen mask in his panic. The irony was not lost on him, even in his oxygen-deprived state. He had mocked the safety demonstration. He had ignored the instructions. And now he was paying the price. Then he felt hands on his face. Mr. Tanaka had unbuckled his seatbelt despite the violent shaking. The older man was holding his own oxygen mask to Marcus's face, pressing it firmly, making sure Marcus could breathe. Mr. Tanaka held the mask there with one hand while bracing himself with the other, his body jerking with every shudder of the aircraft. He was sharing his air, giving Marcus every other breath. Marcus breathed, grateful tears streaming down his face. He tried to push the mask back to Mr. Tanaka, knowing the older man needed it too, but Tanaka shook his head firmly. They shared like that, passing the mask back and forth, each man ensuring the other got enough oxygen. Around them, the plane continued its violent dance. The captain's voice returned, strained now. "We have lost hydraulic systems. We are attempting to control the aircraft manually. Brace for emergency landing. Emergency services are standing by. Brace positions now." The flight attendants called out instructions, their voices competing with the screams of passengers and the groaning of the wounded. Aircraft, Marcus had never felt terror like this. Every second felt like his last. The plane was dropping, climbing, banking, completely out of control. But Mr. Tanaka kept holding that mask, kept making sure Marcus could breathe, even as his own face turned red from lack of oxygen. The older man's sacrifice was keeping Marcus alive. Jenny Kim appeared in the aisle, crawling because standing was impossible. She had a portable oxygen bottle, the kind kept for emergencies. She reached Marcus and Tanaka, hooking the bottle to a mask and pressing it into Marcus's hands. Now Mr. Tanaka could use his own mask full time. The older man took deep, gasping breaths, his hands shaking. Jenny moved on, checking other passengers, her training overriding her fear. The plane broke through clouds. Through the window, Marcus could see ocean, far too close. They were going down fast. The captain was fighting, trying to level out, but the aircraft would not respond. The hydraulics were gone. The controls were barely functional. It was a miracle they were still in the air at all. Marcus thought about his life, about the person he had become. Arrogant, dismissive, cruel to people like Jenny who were just doing their jobs. Mean to people like the mother and daughter who had done nothing to deserve his rudeness. He had spent so much time thinking he was better than everyone around him. And when disaster struck, it was these people, these ordinary people he had looked down on, who were saving him. Mr. Tanaka had risked his life to share his oxygen. Jenny had crawled through a crashing plane to bring him air. Even now, the mother in front of him was comforting her terrified daughter, while simultaneously offering reassurance to the elderly woman across the aisle. Everyone around him was showing courage and compassion. Everyone except him. Until today, he had shown nothing but contempt. The plane hit water. The impact was catastrophic. The fuselage shrieked and groaned. Windows shattered. Water burst through the cabin. The aircraft bounced once, twice, then began to break apart. The tail section separated with a sound like the world ending. People were screaming, crying, praying. Marcus felt his seatbelt cut into his chest as the deceleration tried to throw him forward. Then they stopped. The plane was floating, but sinking fast. Water was pouring in through a dozen breaches. The emergency lighting cast everything in a hellish red glow. Flight attendants were shouting instructions, opening emergency exits, deploying slides that were now floating rafts. People were moving, climbing, helping each other toward the exits. Marcus unbuckled, his hands moving automatically now. He turned to Mr. Tanaka, but the older man was slumped in his seat, blood running from a gash on his forehead. He was unconscious. Marcus did not hesitate. He unbuckled Tanaka, got his arms under the older man's shoulders, and began dragging him toward the nearest exit. The water was up to Marcus's knees now, cold and shockingly real. Other passengers helped. The businessman who Marcus had been rude to earlier took Tanaka's legs. Together they carried him to the exit, passing him to rescuers already stationed on the inflated slide rafts. Marcus jumped after him, plunging into the Pacific Ocean, swimming to the nearest raft. He pulled himself aboard, then immediately turned to help others. He grabbed reaching hands, hauled up struggling passengers, held crying children while their parents climbed to safety. Jenny Kim was everywhere, her training evident in every movement. She was directing people, administering first aid, keeping everyone calm. When she saw Marcus helping, their eyes met for a moment. There was no accusation there, no judgment, just acknowledgement. He helped her lift an injured man onto the raft, and she nodded her thanks. The plane sank in less than 6 minutes. One moment it was there, a broken giant floating in the ocean. The next moment it was gone, pulled down into the dark water. 234 people had been on board. 227 made it to the rafts. 7 souls were lost, trapped in the wreckage. Marcus would learn their names later. He would remember them forever. Rescue boats arrived within 20 minutes. The emergency response had been swift and coordinated. Survivors were pulled from the water, wrapped in blankets, checked by medics. Marcus watched Mr. Tanaka being loaded onto a stretcher, still unconscious but alive. The older man had saved Marcus's life at risk to his own. That fact would never leave Marcus's mind in the chaos of the rescue. Marcus found Jenny. She was sitting on the deck of a rescue vessel, her uniform torn, her hair plastered to her face, exhaustion evident in every line of her body. He approached slowly, not sure what to say. She looked up at him, and for a moment he thought she might tell him to go away. Instead, she just looked tired. "I am sorry," Marcus said. The words felt inadequate, but they were all he had. "I am so sorry for how I treated you, for how I treated everyone. You were right. The safety demonstration was not theater. You were trying to save lives. You did save lives." Jenny was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. "We all survived," she said softly. "That is what matters now." But Marcus knew it was more than that. 7 people had not survived. 7 families would get devastating news. And Marcus had survived only because people he had mocked and dismissed had refused to let him die. Mr. Tanaka, sharing his oxygen, Jenny bringing the emergency bottle, fellow passengers helping him carry Tanaka to safety. He owed his life to the kindness of people he had treated with contempt. The investigation took months. The plane had suffered a catastrophic failure of multiple hydraulic systems, an incredibly rare event. The pilots had done everything humanly possible to save the aircraft, but without hydraulics, control was nearly impossible. The fact that they had managed to ditch in the ocean at all was considered miraculous. The fact that so many had survived was attributed to the training of the crew and the cooperation of the passengers. Marcus changed after Flight 891. The transformation was not instant, but it was real. He started small. He began saying thank you to service workers. He stopped talking down to people. He listened more and talked less. His co-workers noticed. His friends noticed. Some asked what had happened to him. He told them the truth. He had almost died, and he had been saved by people he did not deserve. He visited Mr. Tanaka in the hospital 3 times before the older man was released. They did not talk much. Tanaka was not one for long conversations. But on the 3rd visit, Tanaka said something that Marcus carried with him forever. "We are all just people," he said. "Some remember that. Some forget. You forgot, but you remember now. That is what matters." Marcus attended the memorial service for the 7 who were lost. He did not know any of them personally, but he felt he owed them his presence. He stood with the other survivors, all of them bound together now by shared trauma, and he wept for people he had never met. He wept for the randomness of survival. He wept for the man he had been and the man he was trying to become. Jenny, Kim received commendations for her actions during the crash. Marcus wrote a letter supporting her nomination for a bravery award, detailing how she had risked her life to help passengers even as the plane was breaking apart. He did not mention his own rudeness to her. That was his burden to carry, not hers. But she knew. In her response, thanking him for the letter, she wrote one line that meant everything. "We all have the capacity to change. Thank you for proving that." Marcus still flies. It took him 6 months to board a plane again, but he did it. And every single time, he pays complete attention to the safety demonstration. He makes eye contact with the flight attendants. He thanks them for their service. He follows every instruction. And he thinks about that day above the Pacific when everything he thought he knew about himself and the world was proven wrong. He thinks about the oxygen mask he broke in his panic. He thinks about Mr. Tanaka's hands holding air to his face, He thinks about Jenny crawling through a dying plane to save passengers who had not shown her basic respect. He thinks about strangers helping strangers, about ordinary people becoming heroes in the space, between one heartbeat and the next. And he thinks about the lesson he learned in the most terrifying way possible, that we are all connected, that we all depend on each other, that the person you dismiss today might be the person who saves your life tomorrow. That kindness is not weakness. That respect costs nothing but means everything. That safety demonstrations are not theater. They are the difference between life and death. That every person deserves dignity, from the flight attendant showing you how to fasten a seatbelt to the stranger sitting beside you sharing their air dot markers. Webb laughed at a safety demonstration. Then the plane stopped responding. And in the desperate minutes that followed, he learned what really matters. Not status, not wealth, not being right or being important, just people. Just kindness, just the simple human connection that turns strangers into saviors and transforms tragedy into redemption. So, if you like this video, please like and subscribe for more videos like this.